A very good morning, everybody. Today is the last season of the presentations of semester 4 students. This is the season 4, and you already have completed one presentation that is on translation studies and comparative literature. Three presentations are remaining in this season now. Today, the students are going to make presentations on African literature. Let us have a look at their topics on which they are going to make the presentations. We will have Akshay Nimbark first, making presentation on the conflict of hybrid identity in Okara's poetry, navigating tradition and modernity, followed by Hardi's presentation on echoes of ancestry and innovation, the musicality and rhythmic duality in Okara's the piano and the drums. These are the titles, the piano, the drums. So put it in single inverted comma. Nanda's presentation will be on the weight of laughter, irony and satire in Gabriel Okara's You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. Bhumiba's presentation on ritual as resistance. Yeah. Yoruba spirituality in Wole Soyinka's A Dance of the Forest. Kavita's presentation on reimagining female voices, feminism in A Dance of the Forest. So, A Dance of the Forest is a title. So, again, you have to keep it in single inverted comma. Reshma's presentation on exploring Wole Soyinka's live burial. Live burial also you'll have to put it in single inverted comma. Darshan's presentation on a new ego's journey. Okay? The illusion of joy in motherhood. Jaysri's will be on the joys of motherhood and the commodification of women's reproductive rights. So the joys of motherhood, if that is the title that you are using, then it should be in single inverted comma. Maya's presentation on gendered expectations and women's sacrifices in the joys of motherhood. Yashraj on motherhood as a societal construct, historical and literary perspectives. Vishwas on neocolonialism and the betrayal of independence in Petals of Blood by Gugiwa Thiongo. Petals of Blood, you are putting it as a title, then you have to put it in single inverted comma. Hiral's presentation will be on Thorns of Oppression, Petals of Resistance. Akash on crowning identity, African hair and cultural politics. And the last one will be by Dhatri on bridging past and future, Afrofuturism, African futurism, and African identity. Okay, so let us start first with Akshay's presentation. Yes.
Hello everyone, very good morning to all of you. Today I'll presenting on the topic the conflict of hybrid identity in Okara's poetry, navigating traditions and modernity. So in this presentation I'll deal with that how Okara's poetry reflect the hybrid identity, and for that I have selected his two major poems. First one is Piano and Drum, and the second one is You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. Here is my academic information. First, let's see the introduction. So first, basically the term hybrid identity refers to the uh, multiple culture, and that how on one individual the multiple culture uh, plays a significant role in due to globalization, migration, or the colonialism, how the hybrid identity plays a significant role. So Gabriel Okara is a Nigerian poet and novelist. In his poems Piano and Drums and You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed suggests that how a hybrid identity influence the African culture and the Western culture, how the that influence on African traditional norms. So, the central argument of the presentation is how Gabriel Okara's poetry reflects the complexities of hybrid identity in post colonial Africa, where individuals struggles to reconcile indigenous cultural roots with Western influences, resulting in both conflict and creative cultural synthesis. My research question is how does Gabriel Okara use symbolism and poetic devices in Piano and Drums and You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed to depict the struggle and resilience of hybrid identity in post-colonial Africa? So first, let's see about Gabriel Okara. So Gabriel Okara is a pioneer Nigerian poet and novelist, and he is also known as the first modernist writer of Anglophone Africa. So his literary journey begins with the translating Iju poetry into English and crafting radio scripts reflecting his commitment to preserving African oral traditions within contemporary literature. So Gabriel Okara is basically very deeply influenced by the African traditions and African roots of the culture. The Voice, which is published in 1964, is his first major novel, and The Fisherman's Invocation and The Dreamer, his Vision. These both are his poetry collections, and he received many awards like Commonwealth Poetry Prize in 1979 and Nigerian Prize for Literature in 2005. So let's see about hybrid identity. So hybrid identity refers to the blending of culture due to colonialism, migration, or globalization. So basically, the term hybrid identity suggests the question of hybrid identity arises when an individual influenced by the multicultural concept, when another culture influence the African culture, there is the question of hybrid identity arise. So, post-colonial theorist Homi Bhabha defines hybridity as an in-between space where identities interact, challenging fixed binaries like colonizer, and colonized. This space resists total assimilation and allows for negotiation and transformation of the identity. Through this, African literature also shows the clash between indigenous and Western culture. African literature highlights the tensions between traditional and indigenous values and Western influences imposed by colonialism. So this is the basic concept of hybrid identity. Now let's see how Gabriel Okara's poetry reflects these tensions of hybrid identity. So Gabriel Okara's poetry explored the clash between indigenous and Western culture. So first, in his first poem, Piano and Drum, he suggests some many symbolism, contrast, and nostalgic imagery. Through the symbols of drum and piano, he suggests the first drum as a uh, simplicity of African literature, and piano, Western structure, complexity of Western culture. uh, First, let's analyze the poem Piano and Drum. So, through this poem, he symbolized drum as a African tradition, and the piano signifies Western influence. He uses imagery, contrast, and metaphors to highlight cultural conflicts and nostalgia, identity crisis, and the tensions between tradition and modernity are the major themes of the novel. And in the poem, we may also find the innocence and raw energy of traditional African life, the complexity and alienation caused by the Western influences. And through these both symbolism, drums and piano, the speaker's internal conflict. also we may find between two cultural identities reflect hybridity and its struggle. So in this poem, first he used the symbol drum, jungle drum, which is suggests the simplicity of African culture or African tradition. And the another significance of piano is suggests that how Western culture or Western tradition influences the African norms. So the poem Piano and Drums, first opening lines are like when it breaks of the day at Riverside. So in the first line or opening lines, the uh, Okara suggests or the describe the setting of an African jungle where the peaceful environment are there. And when and the last ending line of the poems are like, and I lost in the morning mist of an edge at a riverside, keep wandering in the mystic rhythm of jungle drums and concerto. So in the opening line, he praised the African culture or African tradition, but in the ending line, he's confused between two traditions or two cultures, which path he has to follow. By the words morning mist, he uses the morning mist as a symbolism of confusion. The, through the drum and piano, he suggests the drum as a African culture and a piano as a Western influence on Africa. So by this line he shows that the two cultural confusion, that which culture he has to follow, an African culture or the Western influence he has to follow. The second poem is You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. So in this poem, he also suggests a hybrid identity, that this poem is basically on mockery Western people, how they mock on African tradition and African culture, and they laughed on the African peoples or the culture. Through irony and sarcasm, the speaker reclaims laughter, turning it into a symbol of resistance. Though in this poem, Okara in the first opening lines suggests that how Western people or Western culture make a mockery on the African tradition and African culture. Then we may also find the colonizers, or we can say the African people, ridiculous African culture to justify domination. And the poem asserts cultural prides and reject colonial narratives. Emotional depth and poetic resistance also we may find. The speaker's laughter become a powerful act of defiance, highlighting hybridity and its conflict. The power imbalance between Africa and the West bring suffering and emotional turmoil to black individuals. European colonizers exploit African while ridiculing their culture. Okara exposed this hypocrisy, revealing a reversal of power. So basically in this poem Okara shows hypocrisy, that on the one hand, Western people mock the African culture, and on the other hand they also getting advantages of Africa. So this hypocrisy we may find through this poem. So these are the some original lines of the poem. uh, the first, you laughed at my song, you laughed at my walk, you laughed at my dance, and you laughed at my insight. These are the opening lines of the poem. That repetition shows the that Western mockery, that how Western people mock the African culture or African traditions. Then, and now it's my turn to laugh, but my laughter is not ice block laughter. These second lines suggest that how Okara turned laughter into the resistance. That word ice block laughter is suggesting a cold, humorous laugh and unmeaningful laugh that Western people make on the African traditions. Then my laughter is the fire of the eyes of the sky, and it thaws your inside. Through this line, Okara also turned the laughter into the resistance. by the world, the fire of the eyes of the sky, signifying the powerful energy source of sky is sun. uh, in the ending line, because my fathers and I owed by the living warmth of the earth through our neck feet. In these last lines, he also turned the laughter into a piece of resistance. By the word warmth of the earth, he suggests that his connection with the African land and African traditions, and the naked feet. These symbolize the Western shoes or Western foot on the African land. That how Western people influence the African traditions. So, in the conclusion, Gabriel Okara's poetry serves as a profound exploration of the hybrid identity that emerged in post-colonial society. Through this poem, Piano and Drums, he captured the tensions between indigenous African traditions and the Western influences, using musical symbolism to reflect cultural duality. In the second poem, You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed, Okara critiques colonial gaze while asserting the resilience of African identity. His works not only highlight the challenges of navigating between two worlds but also emphasizes the strength found in cultural hybridity. Ultimately, Okara's poetry offers a compelling commentary on the ongoing negotiation of identity in globalized and post-colonial landscape. So my learning outcome for the throughout this making this presentation. So first, I in post-colonial theory and concept of Homike Bhabha's hybrid identity in African literature, then analyze how Okara's poetry reflect the cultural conflict and fusion. Then I interpret the symbolism of drum and piano, that how drum symbolizes African tradition or simplicity of African tradition, and how piano signifies the Western influence. Then I recognize colonial condensation and resistance in You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. Then identify post-colonial concerns like cultural displacement, identity crisis, and resistance. Then I understand how Okara's work align with broader themes in African literature. I can assess the historical and cultural context of Okara's poetry, and finally, at the end, explore how African writers negotiate traditions, and modernity. Here are some sources which I referred to the presentation, and thank you. Now for your questions.
Akshay, my question is for you. If Okara were alive today, how might he describe the effect of globalization on African identity?
That- That's an interesting question. That if Okara were alive today, how he sees the globalization in today's world. So as we see, globalization has both the impact good and bad. Okara were also seen that both side of globalization. We may see that globalization gives an opportunity to the technologies and education, and it also spread the Western influence on the African culture or tradition, that it also weakened the African trade culture. So Okara in his poetry, we may find that he believing in balancing the things. So if he were alive today, he also suggests the African people to balance with the thing, that accept this change. Despite of rejecting the change, he would suggest that African people mix the culture and in their own way.
Akshay, my question is, how does Okara's poetry critique the idea that Western culture is superior to African tradition and its richness?
Yes, so Gabriel Okara always suggests that African culture is not backward. It is also a rich and meaningful culture as the Western culture. Through his poems, he also suggests that in the piano and drums, he uses symbol like drum as a African simplicity, and the another is piano as the Western influence or Western complexity. In the "You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed," we also find that the Western people make mockery on the African culture or African tradition, and on the other hand, they also getting advantages of the Africa. So that shows their hypocrisy. So in that context, Okara's message is clear that we may not find African literature as a poor or backward, uh, uh, despite of it should seen as the uh, uh, we can say that it should not be seen as a weaker than the Western culture. Yes, thank you so much.
Hello everyone, myself Hardi Vora, and today's my presentation topic is Echoes of Ancestry and Innovation, the musicality and rhythmic duality in Okara's The Piano and Drums. This is my information table of content, and my hypothesis is Gabriel Okara's piano and drums portrays the tension between tradition and modernity through the musical imageries, suggesting that cultural hybridity creates both conflicts and a potential for a new evolving identity rather than a rigid dis, uh, con, con, dichotomy. My research question is, how does Okara use musical symbolism in piano and drums to explore the complexities of cultural identities? And does the poem suggest a reconciliation of perpetual conflict between tradition and modernity? uh, Introduction of writer. As Akshay provides background of Gabriel Okara, so I'm not dealing with this whole. Gabriel Okara was a Nigerian poet and novelist who blending African thoughts with English literary forms. He was self-educated and worked as bookbinder before becoming a writer and radio playwright. Um his poetry explores contrast, life and death, circular movement between reality and transcendence. Introduction of the poem. Uh, the poem as a soundscape. The poem explores the clash between African tradition and Western influence. Drums in this poem, drums symbolize African heritage, which evoking primal rhythms and cultural roots. And on the other hand, piano represents Western civilization, bridging complexity and alienation. Musicality enhances poetry through rhythms and sound. Drums rhythms reflects African spontaneity, while piano's melody signifies Western's refinement. Imagery contrasts simplicity in drums with sophistication in piano to highlight the cultural tension. Sound devices enrich the poem's thematic depth. The poem mirrors the poet's internal cultural conflicts. It reflects the post colonial struggle for identity and hybridity. Third one is the drums as the pulse of tradition. The drums embodies the heartbreak of African tradition, which echoing its raw energy and communal spirit. Their rhythmic beats symbolize an intuitive, uh, under unstructured way of life which deeply tied to oral traditions. In the poem, the speaker takes the reader through the process of socialization, which ranges from indigenous culture to the modern culture or westernization. Each of this culture is represented with musical instruments like drum and piano, respectively. In this sense, the entire structure of the poem is built on a nostalgia feeling. This is to say, the speaker of the poem has developed physically and psychologically. The first stanza celebrates indigenous culture and civilization through key culture agents. Jungle drums, hunters, and mother words symbolize traditional socialization and culture transmission. The speaker's childhood is shaped by the mystic rhythm of the jungle drums, and which representing collective identity. The riverside setting suggested a fishing-based agriculture lifestyle. The jungle drums are personified as telegraphing culture, which emphasizing oral tradition. Auditory imagery, the word here, telegraphing, speaking, which highlights the oral nature of indigenous communication. The rural community appears untouched by modern civilization. The phrase mystic rhythm, which suggested both cultural depth and possible historic, est, sorry, historic meaning. The poem shifts from listening to jungle drums to observing hunters, wild games, and which marking a transition. Fourth one is the piano as the complexity of modernity. The piano symbolizes the structured complexity of modern and Western influence. Its smooth layer rhythm mirrors the calculated systems of colonization and modernity. Unlike the primal drums, the piano evokes emotional distance and alienation. Um, European civilization entered Africa in the 16th century, which creating cultural divisions. The drum symbolizes African tradition, while the piano represent European influence. This cultural clash led to tension between old tradition and modern European ways. In the poem, Okara highlights the struggles and misconception and anxieties of the younger generation. The speakers encounters a foreign culture that brings both pain and confusion. The word then signals a sudden shift from indigenous to Western influence. The piano symbolizes an alien culture um from faraway lands and the new horizons. Unlike the immediate effect of the drums, Western culture complicates the socialization. The speaker struggles with the complexity and disruptive impact of the new culture. Uh, and despite its difficulties, the speaker is fascinated by the uniqueness of the foreign culture. Caught between two opposing forces, the speaker feels lost in cultural conflicts. Uh, Fifth one is contraptual tension, the interplay of sound and meaning. Uh, in the rhythmic shifts in the poem, mirror the speaker's internal conflicts between indigenous and foreign identities. The interplay of jungle drums and wailing piano creates contraptional tension, which symbolizing cultural clash and hybrid identity. The speaker's tone identity is reflected in the poetic structure, in the ending at the dagger point and wandering between cultures. Juxtapositions of abrupt drum beats with the flowing piano notes, which highlights the contrast between primal urgency and modern complexities. The speaker finds both the speaker's tone identity is reflected in the poetic structure, ending at the dagger point and wandering between cultures. Juxtaposition of abrupt drum beats with the flowing piano notes, which highlights the contrast between primal urgency and modern complexity. The speaker finds both fascination, fascination and alienation in the piano's complexities, which mirroring the struggles with Western influence. Identity is presented as fluid and fragmented, which constantly shaped by the tension between tradition and modernity. The speaker desires yet resists the labyrinthine complexities of the piano, and which revealing the paradox of cultural assimilation. The poem suggested the self recognition which emerged through the difference, not isolation, as identity forms in the interplay of opposing cultural forces. In the conclusion, there is a question: harmony or dissonance in the poetry. Okara's piano and drums does not offer a definitive resolution between tradition and modernity, but rather highlights the speaker's perpetual negotiation between the two cultures. The poem's musicality juxtaposing the primal urgency of the jungle drums with the structured complexity of the piano, which mirrors the tension within culture hybridity, which tradition offers rootedness and simplicity, and the modernity brings complexity and alienation, which leaving the speaker in the state of wandering. Yet this very tension suggests that identity is not a fixed entity, but an evolving interplay of influences. Ultimately, the poem invites the reflection: can the dissonance between cultures give rise to a new harmonious rhythm or identity? Here are my works cited, and thank you. Now you are free to ask questions.
So Hardi, my question is, how does Gabriel Okara use sound imagery in piano and drums to reflect the psychological conflict of the speaker?
Okara uses sound imagery in piano and drums, which reflect psychological conflict of the speaker with the help of the contrast between two cultures, like Western or traditional African culture and Western culture.
Hadi, my question is for you. Okara depicts the tension between tradition and modernity. Can we compare this with how the web series Bandish Bandits explore the evolving significance of music in cultural identity?
Yes, the Bandis and Bandis web series uh, is partially related with the tension between the tradition and modernity as this poem uh, in the because the base of poem and the web series is the main concept is a musical mu- mu- music, and that traditional music or western music both are uh, both are the base talk or concept of poem and web series. Thank you.
Hello everyone. I'm Nanda Chavda, and today's my topic name is The Weight of Laughter, Irony and Satire in Gabriel Okara's poem You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed. This is my academic information, table of content, which I am going to discuss in this presentation. First, start with the introduction. Gabriel Okara's You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed is a satirical poem that critiques colonial arrogance and racial discriminations. Through irony and symbolism, Okara contrasts the genuine emotions of African with the cold, artificial attitude of colonizers. The poem highlights the struggle for cultural identity and challenges Eurocentric misconceptions about African traditions. In these presentations, I explore how Okara's use of satire exposes the deep culture divide between the colonized and the colonizers. This is my research question for this presentation. In what ways does Gabriel Okara's You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed use satire, irony, and imagery to critique the colonial perceptions of African identity, and how does the poem challenge the Eurocentric notions of superiority while asserting the dignity of African cultural heritage? Now, first about the Gabriel Okara. He was born in 1921 in Nigeria. Gabriel Okara was a pioneering African poet and novelist. He wrote poems about African identity, race, class, and colonial exploitation. And his poetry, Fisherman's Invocation, and The Dreamer and His Visions, and the novel In the Voice, a landmark novel experimenting with the linguistic style inspired by the African speech pattern. His poetry include also You Laughed and Laughed and Laughed, Once Upon a Time, and The Piano and Drums reflects tensions between tradition and modernity. His works also explore themes cultural identity, colonial influence, and language hybridity. He received Nigeria's highest literary honor, prize for literature, and he passed away 2019 at the age of 97. Gabriel Okara's collected poems includes the poet's earliest lyric verse, along with the poems written in response to Nigeria's wars years, literary tributes and elegies to fellow poets, activists, the love and love once long dead, and recent dramatic and narrative poems. In the this article, in introduction by Brenda Mary Sbe, quantization lies Okara's works in his history, Nigerian Africa, and English language literatures. Gabriel Okara's collected poem is at once a treasure for those long in search of single authoritative addition and relevation and timely introduction for readers new to the work of one of Africa's most revered poets. His poetry depicts that separates the people and trying to retrieve the loss. Now let us see about the poem. You laughed and laughed and laughed is poem by Nigerian poet Gabriel Okara, which are again called back to Africa and African landscape doing the rounds with their populace, mannerism, language, way of life, culture, traditions, society, dance, rhythm, and musical bits. The words laughed and laughed and laughed at the beauty of poem and as a because outplays the things, racism and racial discriminations. In this poem is a satire on Western people who consider themselves as a superior and Africans inferior. White peoples are comparing the sound of black people's songs, emotions, or pain with misfiring of car because they used to criticize the voice of black people as harsh and annoying. Here, poet Gabriel Okaras satires the white people. They reflect their point of views as they are having every kind of understanding, universal understanding towards everything. In this article, Ishiro's article, Gabriel Okar is a poet and his decisions mentions that the poem You Laugh and Laugh and Laugh seem appropriately straightforward, proud, without arrogance, hurting, without showing it, and blunt without rudeness. It is poem to make the mind speak to the heart. When we read Gabriel Okara's, however, the smile reappeared for through Okara's poetry to was a protest poetry, the poetry of frustration and even failure. Now, here exploring the satire through stanzas. This poem is a conversation between black natives and white people, highlighting African traditions, beliefs, and customs. In this poem, poet Gabriel Okara reveals the struggles and suffering of native Africans. This poem shows how white people mocked and laughed at black Africans, looking down their ways of life. The repeated use of the word laugh represent dominance of white people who fail to understand emotions and hardship of native. Through this poem, Okara strongly addressed the theme of racism and the lack of empathy from white colonizers. In this poem, Okara stands tall against the foolishness of colonialists who laughs at his dance and inside clinging to material object like cars affected European manners, ice block laughters, and other perennial of European identity. In the first two stanzas, the speaker address as an European colonialist that laughs at African way of life. It is very simple words in poems. In your ears, my song is a motor car misfiring, stopping with a choking curve, and laughed and laughed and laughed. In this, Gabriel Okaras observes vivid imageries that are no more than projections of ugliness of his own post-industrialist world. The white man laughs because he can only hear the cacophonous rancor of broken machines of his post-industrialist world. In second stanza, in this particular stanza of the poem, the phrases unintentional walk, omnivorous understanding are deployed as a vehicle for attack on two of the major pillars of Eurocentrism, racism, and hegemony. Here, Atenental walk of pregnant woman and omnivorous is also animal that eats plants and animal both. That is how white people mocked black people. Now, looking forward to strongly defending his African heritage, the speaker criticized the cold and unnatural laughter of proud colonialist. He compares his own genuine laughter with the fake and mocking laughter of the colonizers. Here, the first two lines: "You laughed at my song, you laughed at my walk, and now it is my turn to laugh. But laughter is not ice block laughter. For I know not cars, I know ice block." By using these satirical lyrics, Gabriel Okara says that colonialist laughter is not only icy, it is also by default comparable to mechanical products of European industrialism. During this colonialism, Europeans battled African culture to justify their rule. After independence, Africans reversed this dynamic using laughter, reclaiming their identity. And in the last, in first stanzas of the poem, the mocking colonist awakened to the value of the African cultural heritage that he mocks and forced to ask the most important question uh, of all, why? To which he received an answer the bespeaks of poet's unwavering commitment to his indigenous heritage. In the last stanza, so a meek wonder held your shadow, and you whispered, why so? And I answered, because my fathers and I own my by living warmth of the earth through our neck feet. Gabriel Okara's position is that in the matter of the culture of the colonizer and the colonized, we are left with no choice one way or the other, but the inevitability of reconciliations between both, absolute inevitability of the acceptance of a post-colonial synthesis. Now, in the conclusion, Gabriel Okara is in this poem a powerful critique of colonial arrogance and racial discrimination. Through irony and satire, the poem explored the misunderstanding and prejudice of white colonizers who mock African traditions, and the repeated motif of laughter symbolizes both oppression and resistance as the speaker ultimately reclaims his voice and identity. Okara's works emphasize the necessity of culture, reconciliation, and acknowledging the value of African heritage while confronting the impact of colonialism. Here are the works cited. Thank you. Now, if you have any question, ask me.
So, Nanda, how does the repeated laughter in the poem carry significance, and in what ways does it act as a symbol of cultural defense against mockery? And can we compare it with meme culture?
The symbol of culture defends against ridicule. Here, three words: laughter and laughter and laughter. It represents, I think, a repeated word. While we showing this word, first time you understand it's simple or easy word, but it's a lyrically satire word, and I don't know what about the meme culture, so I didn't. It's compared or not.
So, Nanda, my question is, according to you, which post-colonial poem can be compared with this one, and how do they relate in terms of themes and literary elements?
Yes, one David Derek poem of a far cry from African, and another vultures poem by David Dio. Thank you. Hello, everyone. For today's presentation, I have selected the topic of ritual as resistance, Yoruba spirituality in Wole Soyinka's A Dance of the Forest. These are my academic information. So this is my research question. How does Wole Soyinka use Yoruba rituals in A Dance of the Forest as a form of resistance against political complacency and historical amnesia? My hypothesis is that Wole Soyinka employs Yoruba rituals in A Dance of the Forest not to celebrate Nigerian independence, but and moral confrontation. The rituals within the play function as a form of resistance by creating a liminal space where the dead, the divine, and the living converge, forcing characters and by extension the audience to acknowledge the unresolved traumas of the past. Before I begin, let us understand about the author Wole Soyinka. So he's a very prolific playwright, poet, essayist, and novelist, and he is known for blending Yoruba traditions and mythology and Western dramatic techniques in his works. And through his work, he explores the major themes of colonialism, corruption, tradition versus modernity, and resistance. He's the first African to win Nobel Prize in the year 1986, and he's also known for his political activism. So he's a very vocal critic of military dictatorship in Nigeria, and he was imprisoned because of this in 1967, and because he spoke against the government, and later he also went into exile due to political threats. And even today he continues to be a major voice in African literature as well as African politics. These are some of his famous plays and novels. Let us understand a little bit about A Dance of the Forest. So it was written by Wole Soyinka in 1960, and it was commissioned to celebrate Nigeria's independence and from the British colonial rule. But instead of glorifying the nation's newfound freedom, Soyinka uses this play to critique the moral corruption. He tries to bring to attention that the things that they did in past and that the mistakes they should not repeat. And so because of this, the play became controversial upon its release. And it still remains a landmark in African literature for its bold use of myth, history, and political commentary. So basically, in this play, Wole Soyinka brings the spirits of Yoruba culture, and all these spirits are about their past and about the mistakes they did. And because of this, we will see further what that happens. So first, let us understand a little bit about Yoruba culture. So Yoruba people occupy southwestern Nigeria, and they constitute to about 20% of the country's population. They are connected to a common ancestor, and there are multiple origin stories for them. Yoruba people basically believe in four realms of existence: the world of living, which we all inhabit; the world of dead, which is filled with ancestors who passed away; the world of the unborn, which is filled with the spirits who are not yet born; and the supernatural realm, which has all the spirits and god-like figures. Yoruba culture also has a very interesting concept of time. So they believe it to be a non-linear, with past and present and future coexisting. So they believe that all the events are happening at once. They do not believe time in a single line as we think. And there is also ancestral reverence. So ancestors are highly respected in this culture, and they can be brought back through rituals. There are specific rituals to honor the ancestors. So let us begin with that, the ritual of ancestor worship. So this is a very important ritual for the Yoruba people, and this is basically whenever they feel like celebrating or there is a good occasion, they bring back their ancestor, they remember their deeds, and in a way to honor them. And this is something I think is comparable to Indian culture as well, because we also have this reliance on ancestral worshipping. We believe that our ancestors are never truly gone, and if the people are superstitious and something bad is going on with them, they would also say that our ancestors are not happy with us. They would do rituals to please the ancestors. So in a similar manner, we see it here. As Simran discusses in her article, the Yoruba hold ancestors in high regard. When a person dies physically in the world of living, he or she joins the ancestors in the world of the dead. But here we see the ritual of ancestor worshipping has gone a little wrong, because instead of arrival of ancestors who are pleased with them or who would bless them, we have arrival of the dead man and the dead woman. The dead man was a former captain in Mata Kharibu's court, and he was wrongfully killed because he refused to fight an unjust war. So because of that, he was killed, and the dead woman was his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and she was also there was injustice against her also. So Aroni says in the very beginning of the play, the dead man, who in his former life was a captain in the army of Mata Karibu, and the other, the dead woman, in former life the captain's wife. Their choice was no accident. In previous life, they were linked in violence and blood with four of the living generation. So we see that the selection of these spirits and them coming out of the grave is a very symbolic thing, because they were wrongfully killed in their past life, and they remind the people of current generation that there were these crimes in the past. And while resist historical amnesia, the ancestors force the living to face the moral failures and acknowledge the consequences of their action. They cannot really escape the consequences of their action. They have to accept how they unjustly killed the captain and his wife. Then we have another ritual of gathering of the spirits. We see Aroni and the forest head bring both living and dead into one space. Now, this ritual again blurs the line between the physical and the spiritual world, and it reinforces the idea of Yoruba belief that all of these are interconnected. We already saw the four realms, so Yoruba people believe that all these four realms are interconnected, and they have the power to affect each other. Spirits and ancestor reflect on human behavior. Through this meeting, we see that the spirits and ancestor reflect on human behavior. They see that they are forgetting the crimes of their past, and they are trying to glorify it more than it already was. And because of that, they gather around, and they forest head and Aroni makes this brings this meeting, and they discuss on what could be done and how the people could be reminded of their past. As Mastood says in his article, the spirits gather at the court of the forest father to inform their positions and solve their problems. The inclusion of spirits here is to project an integral cultural order in which all aspects of the universe correspond to a harmonious unity under the power of supreme deity. And so we see here again the idea that Yoruba culture believes in interconnectedness of the spirits, and how our ancestors, the spirits, have a say in what is going on and how they can change the actions. And this gathering of spirit resists the compartmentalization of life and death, past and present. So we basically believe life and death to be separate things. So we have this division, and this is resisted because it is not in Yoruba culture. So this difference, this compartmentalization, is resisted by Wole Soyinka through the gathering of the spirits. Another thing he uses is the ritual of storytelling and myth making. So there is a reliance on Yoruba oral traditions, because we see the spirits, the figures, famous figures of the Yoruba culture. We see blending of myth and reality. And through storytelling, we see the community's hidden truths are revealed and forgotten history resurfaces. So we see that through the ritual of storytelling and myth making, Wole Soyinka shows that Wole Soyinka basically resists this narrative that African tradition do not have a very rich culture, because we see that this is the colonial mindset, that the African culture was primitive and the colonizers' culture was superior to them. And this idea is resisted by Wole Soyinka. And as Isha points out in her article, a dance of the forest thus emerges as a rare instance of drama that fuses together mythology, mime, dumb show, the spoken word, and other devices, like a play within the play, to structure a unique piece of satire on human prosperity or for evil. So we see all of these things, all of these elements are used by Wole Soyinka. So a play within the play we see, and and so many mythological figures come together, their rituals, all of these are used. And through this, Soyinka achieves the effect of satire through the depiction of a mythological paradigm, which convincingly moves back and forth between past and the future, linking up events, motives, and ideas into a composite whole. So we already saw that how these the use of this myth making and this type of indigenous storytelling is a way of resisting the colonial narrative. And it also asserts Yoruba myth and oral history as our vital studied the drama and literature, so he is probably aware that he is doing this, and this is a deliberate attempt. So conclusion, As Rosa mentions in her article, A Dance of the Forest was composed at a time when Soyinka evidently felt his country should be rethinking its cultural heritage, its past, its present, in terms of the future that lay before it. So, because of this motivation, we can say that here Wole Soyinka has used rituals like ancestor worshipping, spirits gathering, and storytelling as a form of resistance. We see Soinka's use of ritual goes beyond mere cultural representation, it becomes a call to action. And by bringing the living and the dead, the past and the present into a single shared space, the play reminds us that true progress cannot be achieved without reckoning with the past. My learning outcome from this presentation was that I understood the role of rituals, that they are something more than just basic things that happened in the past and we are still following. And I also understand the intersection of tradition and politics and how one can use the traditional methods to critique the politics. These are my references, and thank you. Now for your questions.
Bhumi, my question is, do you think the rituals truly bring about political or social change, or are they just symbolic?
After studying this play, I would say they definitely bring about political and social change, although not immediately, but they can bring to light the things that need to be changed. So there is gradual change with the use of rituals, and I think that is possible.
Bhumi, my question is, why does Soinka use the forest as the main setting for these rituals?
This again, I think, goes back to the Yoruba tradition because forest is a place filled with mysteries, and because of that, it is like the unknown. And so they believe the Yoruba people believe it to be sacred, and it is a place where we can say the spirits, the ancestors, all of them. It is a connecting point for them to the living world, and because of that, we see the gathering of the spirits also happens in the forest. So I would say that is because of the Yoruba culture, and because that is a place of power for the spirits, we can say. So that's, thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Kavita Chauhan, and last session of the presentation and same four, I am dealing paper, the reimagining the female voice, feminism in the dance of the forest. It's my academic information. It's the hypothesis of this presentation. The hypothesis of this study is that Dance of the Forest by Wole Soyinka portray the woman as a marginal figure within a patriarchal society, reinforcing the societal bias. However, through a feminist lens, the play can reinterpreted to highlight the female agency, challenges gender oppression, and reclaim women's voice in African literature. My research question is how can a feminist perspective reshape to interpretation of the female character in the play? How does the play contribute to the broader discourse on the feminism in African literature? It's the table of content, and my presentation starts with introduction. Wole Soyinka's Dance of the Forest in 1916 present uh, thought-provoking exploration of the gender role within a post-colonial African society. While the play primarily criticized the political corruption and historical amnesia, it also reflects the subject. Subjugation of the woman through its female characters, who are the often marginalized, silenced, and or objectified. Madame Tortoise embodies a fatal stereotype, punished for her assertiveness, while the dead women represent the forgotten suffering of women eras from history. Through the feminist lens, the play explores the how patriarchal structure play narrative and invite reimagine of women's role beyond passive or destructive archetypes. About the playwright Wole Soyinka, born 1934 to now a Nigerian. And he was a Nigerian playwright, poet, and essayist, renowned for his contribution to African literature and drama. He became a first African laureate to receive the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1986. His work, influenced by the Yoruba tradition, political struggles, and colonial history, often criticizes power structure and political injustice, challenges both colonial oppression and post-independence failures. His literary style merge myth, folklore, satire, and political agency, solidifying his reputation as an African greatest literary voice. His notable play by Death and the King's Huntsman, The Lion and Jewel, A Dance of the Forest. About the play Dance of the Forest, Wole Soyinka's A Dance of the Forest play performed in 1960 and published 1963. The play is politically and socially changed play written in commentary Nigerian independence, unlike traditional celebratory narrative. The play served as a critique of the both past and present failure of African leadership, warning that mistake of the history continue to repeat. It to blend myth, history, and symbolism. Depict the gathering where a spirit of the past confirm the living, explore the human flaw such as corruption, hypocrisy, and oppression. Through its complex narrative, the play explores the theme of power, historical amnesia, and gender roles. Make it one of the Soyika's most significant works. The feminism by address the colonial history, culture, tradition, and gender oppression as a interconnection force. It focus on the woman empowerment with African societal structure, balancing traditional with gender equality. Key aspect intersectionality. That's recognize the corrupt oppression based on a gender, race, and class. Redefine gender role, challenging portray of women as a submissive or a confined of domestic space. Economic and political rights, advocate for education, leadership, and financial independence. Impact of African literature. Modern African writer include Chinua Achebe, Ngugi Thiong'o, and Buchi Emechita and Amadou Adiwa re-enfine the woman's role in literature. Contemporary African literature portrays the strong, independent female character who resist the societal norms. Woman in the Dance of the Forest. A Dance of the Forest and the female character like the portray the role of the feminism is the three main character. It's like a two but three. First is the categorized as a mother and caregiver. They, is a traditional and respect woman such as a dead woman. Is sexualized woman, prostitute, and seductive like Madame Tortoise. Marginalized for forgotten women who are resilience or erased from the history. Key female characters: Madame Tortoise, Rola, a courtesan and female pattern. Madame Tortoise, she is is like past and present is in the past she was Madame Tortoise and she is the queen of the Mother Karibu's kingdom and she now in the present she was Rola, the dead woman, a victim of the neglected and erased. and triple mothers represent the female suffering. The character of Madame Tortoise is a femme fatale, who is the first of the Madame Tortoise, the formal queen and courtesy, known for her cunning, seductive power, use her beauty and wit manipulate men, but ultimately punished for her action. She was a queen in her, Madakharibo's kingdom, and when she was king, she was trying to seduce the men by her beauty, and other way we see in the feminist interpretation of the Madam Tortoise, the society fear women who use their sexuality for power. Male character judge her and they are equal responsible. Rewrite her story would challenging the nation that women must suffer for their independence. In the feminist perspective, the change women and men both have the same responsibility for this condition, but uh, uh, always the and consequences of the responsible the only woman, dead woman, silence voice. A woman wrong in her life forgotten his in the death. She played for recognized but is dismissed. About the life of the dead man, and the in the dance of the forest, she do nothing but suffering by the other's mistake. Feminist analyze represent the generation of the woman silenced by patriarchal soul, challenging the traditional African respect for mother as she is abandoned. Her suffering reflect woman historical erase. In the feminist perspective, the dead woman, she was silenced by her voice in the patriarchal society, but given the voice of the dead woman, but that is the mode of the play is different. Gender operation in the play. How are the women oppressed? Seen as an object of the male desire of manipulation, uh, deny the authority or decision making power. Their pain and struggle as a treated or ignored. In the play, role of character of the female character is like a dead woman. She is suffering, and because her death by the or others, and that she was died that time. She was pregnant, and she was suffering of her child, and for forgiveness of her never forgiveness of her motherhood. A feminist criticize the play reflect the patriarchal control over the female narrative. Women are judged harshly while flaws are accused. A feminist reimagine can challenge these imbalance. Reimagine the female voice of feminist retelling. How can we reinterpret the play? Certaining woman narrative, giving more power to Madam Daughters and dead woman, breaking the stereotype, depicting the woman as a leading and challenging a maker or not victim, empowered through the voice. Creating dialogues where woman actively challenges power structure. What if you play was told from the female perspective, so that the story could shift from the female suffering to the female empowerment. That is and conclusion of this. Wole Soyka's Dance of the Forest show how the women are treated unfairly in the male-dominant society. Female character of face operation and after silence. A feminist view help us see their struggle and imagine a world where women have more power. The play encourage us a rethinking woman role in African literature. This my references, and thank you. Now, if you have any question, feel free to ask me.
My question is, in what ways is the dead woman story similar to the portrayal of female ghosts or spirits in literature and films?
Yes, the the dead woman story similar to the portrayal of is novel is like Beloved by Toni Morrison. In the Dance of the Forest by Wallace Soikas, the dead woman is suffering for her suffering and silence voiced by forgiveness and spirit and the novel Beloved in the novel Beloved, the character of the Beloved, she is feeling trauma and ghost is killing by her own mother because the she is suffering of the not her male patriarchal society and who American not slavery during their life. That's and other is like Woman in the Black, the by Susan Hill. This about the story about the woman who forgive and silence during life.
Kavita, my question is, in what ways can Madame Toto's experiences be compared to the struggles of women in leadership and politics today?
Yes, in the Madam Toto's experience be compared to the struggle of women in the leadership and politics today. In the play that the Dance of the Forest, the Madam Tortoise is a wheat and very strong character by and a strong character and do everything by her wit and intelligent with her beauty, but male dominance patriarchal society, she is a different way. She is a seducing type of woman and power by the that political leadership and political struggle today. Woman as a political scenario, she was a struggle and suffering by she was criticized as and discriminated by the male and other. She is challenging her suffering of the personal life and political life during the this scenario and um, others like Madame Tortoise character is think about the she was become very become is like a because not only the on responsibility in the leadership but also male character who was the do by response and that is and no as no one know that okay, she is strong and but is a different view of point of view and today's modern scenario, woman is strong and witty and with her strength through the this political area she is leader and do everything and that is my side. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is the last session of semester 4, and I'm going to deal with the topic exploring whole Soinka's life career. So, here we go. This is my personal information. Uh, this is my hypothesis. Whole Soinka's librarial employs the metaphor of burial and confinement to represent the silencing of dissent, illustrating how authoritarian regimes attempts to suppress the intellectual and political resistance, yet ultimately fail to bury the truth. And my research question is like, how does whole Soinka's live burial use the metaphor and symbolism to critique political oppression and psychological imprisonment? So this is my table of content I'm going to deal with. So first we'll go with the author, but I'll not talk much because Bhumiba and the others have speak. So yeah, he was uh, he was born on 13th July 1960 in Nigeria, and he was one of the most significant and internationally recognized African writers of the 20th century. And he he wrote mostly about the political activism and played a very vital role in the struggle of independence from the British colonial rule. And he wrote about African identity and colonialism. So he has given many contribution to literature and social justice, where he earned numerous awards. Like in 1986, he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature for a wide cultural perspective and a sense of humor, where it was united as a poetic and sometimes a despotic style, becoming the first African to receive the prestigious award. And he wrote many works like plays, The Swamp Dwellers, Dance of the Forest, which is most famous, The Lion and the Jewel, which was published in 1963, Death and the King's Horseman, which was published in 1976, Ander and Other Poems, which is a poetry collection in the year 1967, The Interpreters, which is a novel published in 1965, Season of Anomy novel, which was published in 1973, and he uh, the Mandela's Earth and Other Poems, which is also a poetry collection in the 1988 year. Then Eke, The Years of Childhood, which is a memoir written in 1981. And You Must Set Forth at Down, that is also a memoir in 2006 published. So his awards like Commonwealth Writers Prize, Anisfield Wolf Book Award, then Agape Prize for Literature. So now I'll go with the overview of the live burial. Well, the poem captures the dehumanizing experience of the solitary confinement, where Soyinka describes his prison cell in precise dimensions, where the poem's line is mentioned like 16 paces by 23, which represents the limited space he was forced to live in for nearly 2 years and 22 months, symbolizing as the extreme restriction of freedom. And the line the from the poem, siege against humanity and truth, which suggests that his imprisonment was an attempt to silence not just him but also the truth he try to represent it. So throughout the poem, we can see that how Soinka compares himself to Antigone, which is a Greek myth, where the Greek heroine who defied the state to uphold the moral law, where this Antigone tried to do what was right at that time. So the funeral he did of his brother, she did of his brother. So he questions whether the poet Holswinga, that he too can unearth the corpses of yesteryear. Means he's trying to tell that do I have the right to speak the truth or not? Like he's questioning to himself, and metaphorically asking if he can resurrect the suppressed truth, like he can bring all the hidden truths and reality. So now we'll go with the analysis of themes, symbols, and poetic devices, where the themes, oppression and injustice, where The poem critiques the Nigerian military government, who brutality and which shows brutality and suppression of the dissent. Means how with the poet, the government was disagree with him, and the government's attempt to erase his intellectual presence by isolating him reflects the wider operation of political prisoners. Like when he was in a imprisonment, he was like not able to speak anything. He was uh, not able to speak anything because he was under the system of government, and he was uh, punished for that uh, unintentionally. So mental and physical torture were the metaphor of the poem. Lie burial conveys that how confinement is equivalent to being buried alive, like suffocating in the darkness. Where when he was in jail, he feel like from his mind that I'm buried like live. So denial of reading and writing material symbolizes an effort to bury his thoughts and voice. We can see in the poem Librarian. The power of truth, where he presents truth as a living entity that his jailers seek to suppress. Means he living and like he wanted to live living with the actuality, but the system authority were trying to suppress him. So then, despite the attempt to bury the truth, the poet is arguing that truth cannot be silenced. Means he is trying to say that one day or the other day, the truth is going to come out. Like with the poems like poems line 16 paces by 23, which represents his prison sales dimension, and metaphorically the limitations which was imposed on his mind and freedom. Like when where he was in a imprisonment in custody at that time, he was in the place where he was implemented. That place was very one room was very small and isolated, which was like uh, darkness. Antigone reference, when it connects his struggle for justice with classical defiance against the tyranny, Antigone, about the Antigone. Corpses and burial imagery, where it suggests the political operation, forgotten victims, and historical injustice. Darkness and silence, which represent both the physical isolation and the separation of speech and thought, which was not given to him, Holzweinger. These are the poetic devices used in this poem. Metaphor, the librarial as a metaphor for mental suffocation in solitary confinement when he was in custody. A repetition, we with this line, which emphasizes his determination to uncover the repressed truth. Means he was not like I have said first that he was not able to. His voice was repressed. Personification, truth is treated as a living entity that the state attempts to bury. This is a type of personification used here. Then allusion, we can see reference to Antigone and Greek mythology, which aligns his imprisonment with historical struggles for justice. So now we'll go with the conclusion. So the poem Liberial is not just about Soinka's personal suffering, but it speaks for the all political prisoners and people who are silenced for speaking the truth. So around the world, many activists, writers, and journalists are still being jailed, censored, or even killed for challenging those in power. So the poem exposes the cruelty of authoritarian governments that try to suppress the freedom of speech and control what people can say or believe. So, however, it also shows that the human spirit is strong even when imprisonments, like the poet Holzweinger, he is believe in himself that he is being in jail, then too he has a uh, courage to speak the truth. Soinga did not give up, just like many others who continue to fight for justice today. So his survival and lifelong activism prove that truth cannot be buried forever, just generation. So truth will always find a way to resurface. So no matter how much those in power try to hide it. These are my references. And thank you. Now it's a session of questions. So if anyone is having questions, you're free to ask.
Reshma, my question is, in what ways does live burial remain relevant today? How do you think it resonates with contemporary issues of political imprisonment and censorship?
Yes, Bhumiba, live burial remains relevant today uh, because we can see that many the themes like imprisonment, censorship, uh, talks about the relevant today. Like the we can see the journalists, the writers, they face many problems in speaking the truth. While we can give example of this Salman Rushdie, like he wrote this work Midnight Children. Then he faced many problems, like his eyes got affected, and we can see that. So the in contemporary time we can see that everywhere the political issues are going on, and it is I think current temporary, it's going on. So this resonates with the life.
So, Reshma, my question is for you. How does the mention of Antigone in the poem connected to Soika's personal challenges and experience?
Yes, Kavita. The mention of Antigone in the poem connects to Soinka's personal challenges and experiences, where we can see that how he was personally facing problems to speak the hidden truths, and he was very against his own government, who was against his. So he tried to speak the hidden truths and the reality of the world. And where Antigone in this poem, where she does what was right at that time. So she did the funeral of her brother. So in this way we can see that it connects the Antigone in the poem connects to the Soinka's personal challenges and experiences.
Next presentation.
So, hello everyone. Myself Jayshree Khacher. Today I am going to give my presentation on the joys of motherhood and the commodification of women's reproductive rights. This is my academic information. This is the table of content. My hypothesis for this presentation is motherhood is not solely a personal experience, but a societal tool used to regulate and control women's autonomy as seen in both historical and contemporary context. My research question for this presentation is that how does Buchi Chita's The Choice of Motherhood critique the societal expectations of women's reproductive roles, and how do these themes manifest in modern debates on surrogacy, egg donation, and forced sterilization? Uh, in introduction, the novel Joys of Motherhood is the main theme of this novel is motherhood as a sacrifice and burden. Now, the main character Nuigo, who is a woman whose life revolves around raising children only to be abandoned at the old age. This novel's key question is that is motherhood a joy, a duty, or a societal exploitation? In traditional Nigerian society, a woman's worth is tied to childbirth, is especially male hires. As we know in the novel, that how Nuigo first was sent back to her parents' home because sacrifices everything for her children but finds no happiness or reward. Even after her second marriage, she able to give delivery to children, but still at the end she sacrifices everything for her children, but at the end she doesn't find any happiness. Imichita critiques the romanticized idea of motherhood, showing it as a societal tool that exploits women. As we know that motherhood has been romanticized from the starting. We all have been uh, 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 brown up with the idea of that mate ma bija vagda na va, that motherhood is the best feeling in the world. The novel questions whether motherhood is fulfilling or merely imposed obligation that denies women's autonomy. Nuigo's struggle as a mother, that what she struggled. Nuigo's worth is measured by her ability to bear children. If she can give birth to children, then she is accepted. If not, then she isn't. Society pressures women to find identity through motherhood. That we know that in society that women's main role is shown as a mother. And then economic burden of motherhood. Nuigo sacrifices personal well-being to provide for her children. She does job in market for so that her of raising children in a patriarchal system. Disillusionment and children don't provide security. Despite her sacrifice, Nuigo is abandoned in old age. Challenges the belief that motherhood guaranteed future stability. From Nuigo to present, the ongoing struggle for autonomy. Historically, a woman's worth was tied to childbearing. As I say, that in not only in Africa but in many cultures, motherhood was seen as a duty rather than a choice, reinforcing patriarchal control over women's body. Even if we see in our society, at our home, that the role of mother. If I must say that in not just in the novel, but we have Nuigo back at home. Our mom, our grandmothers, or in our family, there are many mothers who are only tied to their children's happiness. Uh, at the uh, at the early age, they got married and then they got pregnant, and they after birthing their child, their life is only surrounded to around their children. Even today, economic, social, and political systems limit reproductive choices. Women, especially in marginalized communities, face pressure to conform to societal expectation of motherhood. Modern struggles reflect the same control. There are many modern years with long-term health risks. Surrogacy. While offering a financial relief, commercial surrogacy often leads to exploitation with a limited legal protection. And then forced sterilization. Government policies have historically targeted marginalized women, coercing them into sterilization under the guise of population control. Uh, with that, when we talk about commodification of human reproductive rights, the first is human egg farming, a modern reality. So first of all, what is human egg farming? Human egg farming is the process of harvesting and commercializing women's egg for reproductive purposes, often used in fertility treatments, surrogacy, and medical research. we all know about the IVF and all, but even if it's provide children to many peoples who can't conceive, but there are still ethical and health concerns concerns regarding to this, that risk includes hormone treatment side effects, long term health impacts, and lack of informed consent. Raises concerns about the commercialization of women's body. uh, how human egg farming connects to New Ego story. Just as New Ego's worth was tied to childbirth, modern society still commodifies women's reproductive abilities, highlights ongoing struggles where women's body are controlled by external pressure. The ethics of egg donation and illegal human egg farming. Egg donation, a reproductive reality. Egg donation means that women's egg have been egg they took the eggs and they are given to someone else. The process is that women's eggs are taken from someone else and sometimes without asking their consent, and also health risk. For regulation, Indian laws 2021 restricts commercial egg sales. Illegal egg farming cases. There are so many cases we can find in India, in Tamil Nadu during 2021. A 16-year-old girl was coerced into multiple egg donation for a minimal pay. It's pay like 20,000 to 50,000. There is another story of a woman who is like 44-year-old, who has been who was married at the age of 15, and she started donating her eggs at the age of 33, and at the age of 44 she says that she regrets donating the eggs, and there are she also is suffering from many uh, health risk. Then in Ukraine, 2022 reports all illegal surrogacy clinics harvesting eggs without consent. If I say in today's day, in Georgia, just few days ago, a criminal network which was led by Chinese gangsters, also known as egg mafias, enslaved women for human egg. Like hundred of women were coerced in and to believe that they will get a job there, but in Georgia they were forced to egg donation. How it connect to New Ego? New Ego struggle parallels the commodification of women's reproductive abilities. Both cases highlight societal control over women's body. The surrogacy debate in India. India's commercial surrogacy boom pre 2021. India was a global hub for commercial surrogacy. Poor women engaged in surrogacy for financial survival. That so many women had to be a surrogate for a financial survival. Lack of legal protection led to exploitation. They had a Pandey. Then India had the Surrogacy Regulation Act in 2021, which, according to which, bans commercial surrogacy. Only altruistic surrogacy is allowed, intended to prevent exploitation but limits economic opportunities for poor women. Nuigo views motherhood as an economic necessity, not a source of joy. Similarity, surrogacy turns motherhood into a financial arrangement than more than a emotional experience. Forced sterilization in India. In Chhattisgarh, during 2014, there were like 83 women who were who had been forced sterilized, and out of these 83, there are 12 women died due to post mass sterilization surgeries, and 25 were in a critical condition. What it led, that unsafe conditions and contaminated medicines contributed to fatalities. Women were pressured into sterilization due to financial incentives, economic pressure on women. Poor women paid small sums to undergo high risk procedures. As I said, that they only got paid like 20,000 to 50,000. It may seem that it's not that much money, but if we see that for poor people, this is also a lot of money. State-run sterilization camps targeted marginalized communities, that those who are either backward or not educated. They only targeted them. Then, like no ego, these women had little control over their reproductive choices. As I said, that they had to go through this. Motherhood and fertility are shaped by external forces rather than personal agency. Son preferences and dowry deaths. So we know that the son, we all know about son preferences and dowry. That's India's gender imbalance. That female foeticide and dowry-related violence remain prevalent. Skewed sex ratio due to deep-rooted patriarchal norms. As we have always, most of girls have been here that dikri to sapno bharo hoy. So we can see that the girl child is always neglected, while the birth of son is always been a first priority. Women pressure to bear sons, that women have to be a mother of a son, even though it doesn't depend on women that it will be a boy or girl, but still they have to they have to you have to birth a boy. Sons are seen as a financial security, while daughters are considered liabilities. Many women faces societal and familial pressure to produce male hires. As we also know about this दूध पीती करवानी प्रथा, that girl child were in when they were born, they had killed by their own family members. How it connected to Nuigo? Nuigo believes having sons will secure her future. She believes that having sons will secure her future. She believes that From the marriage age controversy. Menstrual taboos and period poverty. Menstrual taboos and period poverty. Women still face stigma for natural processes. Menstruation is considered impure in many cultures. Restrictions on temple entry and food preparation and societal interaction. As a I through these things that I am not allowed to enter in any temple and or also in a kitchen, and so many women are also go through that, and there are so many controversies also going on about big temples that women are not allowed during their menstruation. Lack of access to hygiene products in rural India. Many women cannot afford sanitary products, leading to health risks. Limited awareness and education worsen the issue. In a rural area, many women don't know what is a hygiene. First of all, they only stays with the old ways for their hygiene, and also they don't are aware of the problems that will create, so it also worsens the issue. And how it connect with Nuigo struggles mirror how society dictates women's body. Both cases show how biological functions become sources of societal control. The marriage age controversy. Proposal to raise age from 18 to 21. Government proposed increasing the legal marriage age of for women to before that it was 18, but still women's were getting married. Parents were getting marry off their daughters at the age of like 17 or 15, and still we can see it in the rural area that girls are getting married at the early age of that. They don't even know that they don't have any sex education or any awareness regarding to uh, this topic is seen as a taboo in our society. There are debates that empowerment versus ignoring the deeper issues. Critics argues it does not address root problems like lack of education and economic dependence, implementation challenges in rural and traditional communities. How Nuigo, who was married off at the very young age, limiting her choices and financial independence. If she was got married a bit older at the was a very bit older age, then she had choice that she would have been a financial independent. Highlights how marriage laws impact women's autonomy and future prospects. In conclusion, motherhood has long been shaped by societal expectations rather than personal choices. In the joys of motherhood, no ego struggles, it reflects a reality that persists across cultures. Women are often from menstrual taboos to the pressure to bear sons, the exploitation of women's reproductive rights remain a global issues. These challenges highlight the urgent need for women to have full autonomy over their own bodies. True empowerment does not come from changing laws alone, but from dismantling the deep-rooted structures that limit women's choices and independences. These are my references. And now, if anyone have a question, you may ask me.
Shri, my question is how does the Nuigo's financial struggle reflect the economic challenges faced by the single or working mother in the today's society?
So, Nuigo's financial struggles can be reflect so many women's challenges nowadays too, that we have seen so many single mothers or those who got abandoned by their husband who is working, and they are providing food for their family. They are paying fees for the education of children. There are so many things they are doing. uh, uh, we can see there are many women who is working now. There are so many companies in where the single mothers are working. uh, so yes, women, today's women also faces the same problem new ego had faced. Anyone else?
So Jayashri, my question for you is, was Naif a victim of society or just irresponsible?
Irresponsible, as we can say that knife was due to colonizers. He had to work in a very low paying job and had to leave, but still he had more option than Nuigo herself, but still he abandoned her and the children's. He didn't even provide that much for Nuigo to raise her children and all. And also we can see in now the examples we have seen that many men we are going to work in cities and they don't provide money back to their wives or their family at home. We have seen many other newses like someone is going to someone went for a job outside and they have a, after leaving the family here he have a wife wife and children, and there he is marrying another woman and having a kids. So uh, for me knife is both a victim of society and also irresponsible. Thank you.